My name is Rich. I worked in SHOPP. I was a SHOPP liaison for districts 7, 8, 11, and 12, and some of the other districts for the past 6 years. And in November, I was appointed to the office chief. So I've been working in SHOPP for quite a while. I've seen a lot of things, and let me get out of the way first. Anyway, I'm happy to have an opportunity to talk to you all. So learning objectives of today, we're going to go through the purpose of the SHOPP, what the SHOPP does and does not do, our SHOPP programming goals, the cycle in which we program projects and conduct our other programming actions, the programming actions that we do make, timely use of funds, and specifically SHOPP office's role. I think Jaime had probably covered some of this stuff with you guys earlier this week. And then we'll go over SHOPP contact information, who is in our office and who you can get a hold of to help you. So the purpose of the SHOPP is to maintain and preserve the state highway system. So we are a fix-it-first operation. We do not build new work. So we've got the little green check mark. We do highway, bridges, safety, transportation-related facilities. Does anybody know what a transportation-related facility is? It is a maintenance station. It is a commercial vehicle enforcement station. CHP, yes, there are partners with our commercial vehicle enforcement stations. Rest areas, well, yeah, sort of. We do take care of rest areas. That's true. Our main ones that we do, maintenance stations. We do all kinds of work inside maintenance stations. We repair, we upgrade maintenance stations, and the CVEFs. Sometimes we do work with our office buildings, our trans labs. We do work with those. We upgrade those. And let's see, operational improvements. Does anybody know what an operational improvement the SHOPP would do is? Operational improvement would be a aux lane, an aux lane for acceleration or merging or deceleration, either when you're getting onto a freeway or getting off of a freeway. An operational improvement would be a roundabout. An operational improvement would be a right turn lane at an intersection. Other operational improvements that we would do would be a truck climbing lane or a passing lane, something that is temporary in nature and allows us to reduce congestion in areas. Emergency and safety are our highest priority. We do director's orders. I don't know if anybody in here has been involved in director's orders. There you go. A director's order is a project in which we have an urgent need to address. A sinkhole, a load has hit a bridge and hit one of the girders or multiple girders underneath the bridge. Wildfires, floods, slides, lots of these kind of things the SHOPP covers. Safety projects, anything that our district safety branches identify as a safety need. It meets an SI or it's part of a monitoring program. We will program these immediately. Well, we program them mid-cycle. As soon as the project is identified, as soon as headquarters safety signs off on those, we do safety projects all throughout the cycle. What can't we do in the SHOPP program?
Capacity enhancing projects?
Specifically, we cannot add a through lane of traffic. So yes, you're right. We can do things to reduce congestion, which is kind of seen as capacity enhancing, but specifically, we do not add new assets for lanes to the system. You need to find a non-SHOPP funding source for that. Other things that we can't do that go ahead.
Would managed lanes or express lanes be considered SHOPP, or is that considered new traffic lanes?
So that's an interesting question, because in District 12, we are doing a project to upgrade a HOV lane to a managed lane. And so this is something that we've kind of started doing as a pilot situation in the shop. In the past, we haven't done a lot of work to convert the usage of managed lanes, but it looks like it's something that we're probably going to start sliding into. District 2 has a managed lane project that they are working on as well. What else can't we do? We can't buy equipment. We can't do a project where all we're doing is designing or surveying. We can't do projects where we're just stockpiling materials in the maintenance yard. So we can't buy a bunch of guardrail pieces and just pile them up somewhere on our project. Everything needs to be done. Everything needs to lead to what is called a capital improvement. We need to make improvements on our facilities. Some type of infrastructure needs to be repaired or upgraded. Every 2 years, we do a new SHOPP document. We prepare a document that addresses statewide needs. We're going to focus on the resources with the highest priorities. Generally, this is teed up for us by the asset management group. Leading into that, we're consistent with the asset management plan, and we tie into the goals and projects that flow from the 10-year project book. Every 2 years, a new SHOPP cycle looks like this. We do it SHSMP every 2 years. Every 2 years, we get a new funds estimate. And then we develop a SHOPP document. So our last SHOPP document that we adopted last year, almost 1 year ago exactly, was a 2024 SHOPP. That flowed from the 2021 SHSMP. So older documents turn into PID plans, which turn into SHOPP programs. This is a better visualization of what the SHOPP and SHSMP cycle looks like. We refer to the SHOPP as a 4-year plan, but we update it every 2 years. So that didn't make sense to me when I came into the SHOPP. And so this guide kind of helps show what we do. Every 2 years, we take the last 2 years of the prior SHOPP and we add another 2 years of work onto that. And so when we start developing the 2026 SHOPP, it's going to be the last 2 years of the 2024 SHOPP, which is 26, 27, and 27, 28. Those are going to become the first 2 years of the 2026 SHOPP. And we're going to add years 28, 29, and 29, 30 to that. So any questions about what the SHOPP cycle looks like from this graph? I think this is very good in illustrating how you can have a 4-year plan and update it every 2 years. CTC agenda items. This is mainly what our office does in conjunction with you guys. Non-delegated actions must be approved by the commission. So this means all of the regular work that we do to update our projects. We need to build book items, which are then presented to the commission for approval. We have delegated actions that we do sometimes. Our emergency projects are delegated, and our O&O safety construction allocations are also delegated to the department. Meaning, we can do these at any time. We do not need to wait for a SHOPP cycle or a CTC meeting cycle to commit these actions. So projects that we do need CTC approval on are new project programming, other than director's orders, phase allocations, so PADD, PS&E, right-of-way support, construction support, construction capital. Right-of-way capital is usually delegated unless it happens to be $10 million or greater, which is very rare, but you'll know when that happens. Change amendments need to be presented to the CTC. These are amendments that flow out of PCRs. Allocation time extensions also need approval. How many of you are involved in allocation time extensions? Okay, so some of you are. So previously, this presentation had a lot more information in that. I knew a lot of the PMSU staff don't get involved in that, but we'll talk about it a little bit more later. Sure. There is a quiz at the end of the presentation. It's easy. You guys will do great. These are examples of agenda items that we help put together. All these flow from district requests, and we help put things together. These right here are change amendments. So when a PCR is processed in the district, and I think Horatio talked to you guys, or Horatio or somebody from project manager talk to you guys about PCRs. This is what they look like. We show the changes on the project, and then we tell a little story about why we're making these changes. And so we use PCRs probably more than most other people in the department, especially the narrative section, that's section 3 of the PCRs. New project amendments. So this is an example of 2 safety projects being added into the shop. Some programs that we have a reservation, which allows us to program new projects throughout the shop cycle, not just on our periodic 2-year development cycles. Capital outlay support allocations. This is what our PS&E and right-of-way support allocation items look like. Typically, when you'll come in for a COS allocation, we'll need environmental document information. And so you can see that both these are categorical exemption projects. Construction allocations, we typically call these votes. Technically, a lot of these things are votes because they're voted on by the commission. But construction allocations are when you are ready, when your project is RTL, and you are ready to advertise and award and send your project to construction. Allocation time extensions. I just asked, a group of you over there are involved in allocation time extensions. We do new allocation time extensions when a project is, when we're at the end of a fiscal year. If you haven't been able to deliver a project in 24-25, and you know that sometime in the next 19 months you're going to be able to deliver a project, our team can work with you to help put together an allocation time extension. We also do amended allocation time extensions. If you've asked for 6 months and you end up needing maybe 9 months, we can work with you and help put together a justification to get those approved for you. Baseline agreements. Whenever your project has a total cost of over $50 million, a baseline agreement needs to be put together. This is going to involve filling out some forms that we've got. You need to make sure your CTIPS record is in alignment with your project report, and we present everything together as a baseline agreement package for approval. The other thing our office does is minor program updates. Are very many of you guys involved in minor program projects? A handful of you? Okay, so whenever we are swapping minor A projects out or making other updates to the minor program, we're going to do different updates. We're getting ready to put our new list of minor projects together for the 25-26 fiscal year. And so we've got a minor coordinator in our office that's working with a lot of you or other staff in your districts to put those lists together. Yeah, go ahead. I can hear you. Yes.
Time I got it up, and we kind of went on there and it showed me what forms need to be filled out.
Yeah. So the question is, what do I do if I have to do a baseline agreement and I don't know who to reach out to? Jessica in our office is our baseline agreement coordinator. I'll show you her name and number at the end of this presentation. She's easy to get a hold of. She's processed baseline agreements for us for, I don't know, a year and a half maybe. She can help you put things together. We have a lot of documentation on our website that's also useful to let you know which forms you need to fill out, what documents you need to provide, and what information you need to make sure is in alignment.
Thank you.
SHOPP guidelines. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Just really quickly, since you covered some of the things that the SHOPP handles, and in this case, the allocation time extensions, and probably this I should have also asked to the CTC liaison when they did their presentation, but I'm just wondering, why is the policy that there's only one time extension per phase, yet it's commonly allowed to do amendments? I mean, what I'm saying is, I'm not saying don't do amendments because obviously we need them. But my question is, why stress so much that there's only one allowed and then yet go around it and allow amendments when it's obvious that sometimes in some cases amendments are required?
So allocation time extensions were written into the SHOPP guidelines up until we updated the guidelines in December 2024 as a one-time item. They didn't change the language in there when they added a caveat that says amendments will be allowed in special circumstances in there. But the intention is that projects are delivered in the fiscal years, phases are delivered in the fiscal years in which they're programmed. Allocation time extensions are discouraged. They're heavily criticized by CTC staff when we work with them. It's something that we want to avoid. We want to program projects in the year in which we intend to deliver them. Program our phases in the year in which we intend to deliver them. So yes, we can amend time extensions. It is now codified in the SHOPP guidelines that we can amend time extensions, but we do not want time extensions to become something that we rely on to manage our program. It is far easier, far less work on everybody if we program projects with realistic delivery years. Going back to SHOPP guidelines. SHOPP guidelines are developed by the CTC with department input. It's a partnership. These are rules and regulations for how SHOPP works. I refer to these very frequently, at least multiple times a week. I have these guidelines open. I'm looking through them. We have a lot of questions about how we can get around guidelines in here. Usually we can't, but reading these will help you understand why we do things the way that we do. Responsibilities of the SHOPP office. We do new SHOPP programming. In the case of director's orders, we have a delegation, but every other project needs to be programmed before we can start allocating phases and getting to work on P&ED in the later phases. We are heavily involved in the PCR process, and we produce the SHOPP amendments that I showed, or the amendments to projects that I showed earlier. We process changes to scope, cost, schedule, and performance. Every project has performance. It is something to keep accurate. If you are changing one thing in a project, in a PCR, make sure you pay attention to what else that might affect. So if you are changing scope, should your construction cost increase? Should your construction capital and support increase? Is that going to change your performance? Everything needs to be considered when we're doing amendments. We do need a solid justification. We write a 4-line or less story to go with every amendment that we do. And so we are going to be critical of the PCRs when they come through, make sure that we have a solid justification all the way through and that everything is consistent. PCRs require CTC approval, or I'm sorry, amendments require CTC approval. PCRs require Caltrans approval. We process allocations for capital outlay support and construction phases. These are approved by CTC. We have delegated for O&O safety projects only and emergency projects. So we can do those outside of the meeting schedule. We still need to report those to the CTC later on. Our minor program is largely delegated, especially for our minor Bs. For our minor As, sometimes we need commission action. And SB1 baseline agreements, all of these need to be approved by the commission. Sometimes they take a critical look at them, sometimes they slide through. You guys already went over C-tips with Heather and her staff, but I'm just going to point out some parts that are important to our office. There's a notes field right here. This keeps track of what programming actions have happened on your project. You can walk through this right here and see a history of when different phases were allocated, when different amendments were processed on your project, when it carried over from one shop cycle to the next. This is your history of a project and when these events happened. You can tab through the prior version button down there or the next version on there to see what the CTIPS record looked like before any of these other actions happened. The location description, this is CTIP specific. This is not going to match the plans preparation manual. We write these in plain language for public consumption. These are what show up in CTC meetings. They're meant to be written for contractors, for concerned citizens. We write them in plain language, and we will not always cover every single item that the project is doing. Depending on the cost of the project, if it's short, we're just going to say improve intersection. If it's a huge project, $100 million, maybe we're going to list 10 different items that the project is going to do. Our descriptions are written in a certain way. They do not match plans preparation manual. If this is a project in San Luis Obispo County, we are not going to mention the county. We're going to only mention the city that the project is in. Anyway, we have a certain style guide that we use in our own office. And if ours is inaccurate, let us know. But if it differs from descriptions that you see in other systems, that's fine. This is our programming layout where all of our programmed amounts and allocations exist. Over in the orange section, if you see a number there, that means that phase has been allocated. If there is a blank for construction support, right-of-way capital, construction capital, that means those phases have not yet been allocated. After CTC has approved allocations, then they'll show up. We typically try and get them in on the day that the commission approves these actions. The yellow is the current SHOPP cycle. So this is a 2024 SHOPP project. The yellow denotes the fiscal years that belong to that SHOPP cycle. So after we adopt the 2026 SHOPP, 24, 25, and 25, 26 won't be yellow anymore, but 28, 29, 29, 30 will be yellow. It depends on the dock year up there at the top where it says 2024. Those are the years that SHOPP cycle exists in. So this is a carryover project. We can tell because allocations are made in prior years to the current cycle. If I were to open this record in CTIPS and click the prior version back until I go past the one where we did a carryover into the current SHOPP, you'd see the yellow band shift back 2 years. So the yellow band always shows you which SHOPP cycle this project exists in. That's a good question. This is our performance layout. We are going to show the program code. We're going to show the performance on this. For most of our primary and supplementary assets, we're going to show good, fair, poor data. Even though this project might have, this is a pavement project, even though it might have some culverts, it might have some bridges on it, we're only going to show performance tied to the assets of the program code that this project exists in. So if you want to know more about your project, look at it in Asset Management Tool. If you want to know what programming cares about, look in C-Tips on the Programming tab. New SHOPP programming. Now that we're currently in the 2024 SHOPP, we're only programming new reservation projects. So that is O&O safety projects, 130 emergency projects, 131 restoration projects, and 160 relinquishment projects. Occasionally, we do something else that's on a conversation basis, but for the most part, these are the only projects that we have reservations set up for, and the only projects that you can easily program into the current SHOPP. When you program a project, we need two things. We need a planning document, a PID. If we're reprogramming something that's already hit the PR stage, we can program off of a project report. If things have changed since that document has been produced, we need a supplemental document to the PID or the project report. It needs to match whatever you're asking for in your NPPR, your new project programming request. Has anybody generated an NPPR in here? Where do NPPRs come from? Okay. NPPRs come from asset management tool data. So if you have an NPPR and it has incorrect information on it, that means that the asset management tool record needs to be updated. So asset management tool and SHOPP need to be in alignment when we're programming a new project. We've got an Excel form on our website that lets you generate a NPPR form when you're programming a new project. 2026 SHOPP projects need to be identified in your district's 10-year project book. This is something that you work on with asset management. They must be an approved candidate listing project for the new SHOPP cycle. And again, your PID needs to match your NPPR or whatever document you're using to program your project with. All right, first activity. We are going to program a O&O project. The PID has been signed and your project is entered into the asset management tool. You download your project form from the SHOPP intranet webpage to generate a new NPPR. Up top is our estimate page in the PID. On the bottom is our NPPR funding summary on here. The questions are, how did you do? And if you made a mistake, how would you fix it? What do you think? Did we do great? Okay.
From the PID estimate, the years are not matching the fiscal years of allocation.
What's not matching?
From the MPPR funding, you see that it says 24-25 for
Okay.
PAED, and then PSNE right-of-way construction is 25-26 for all of them. It doesn't match with whatever is on the PID estimate. Also, it doesn't make sense to have them like that. Why would you allocate? I'm talking for support. For PAED, you see it's 24-25. And then how about PSNE and right-of-way?
Oh, 25-26. Okay, these are wrong, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, is that the only mistake? Oh,
Right-of-way support,
I
the
got it up here
cost.
too. Right-of-way support, it's a wrong number. Okay, we got some wrong numbers. What do we do to fix this? Any ideas? Well, we need to correct one of these documents, right? How about we correct the asset management record and generate a new NPPR. So we're going to go back in here and make sure that our numbers are correct and generate a new form. But what if our asset management record was accurate? We're going to do a supplemental PID. Has anybody been involved in preparing a supplemental PID? A supplemental PID it can be a memo. It can update whatever needs to be updated from the original programming document that you had. And it's going to say, we've got some updates to our programming table. We've got some updates to our performance. We've got some updates to our scope. We've got some updates to our schedule. Your memo only has to be as long as it is to update your original programming document to what the current state of the project is. Sometimes we do a PID and it was signed off a year ago. But now we're going to look at our estimates, and our estimates have some cost increases on it. We're going to do a supplemental PID to update the costs on our project to make sure that we're programming the right amounts for each of our phases. PCR process. Again, we need a solid justification for each change. If you are changing the year of PS&E from 26-27 to 27-28, we need to know why. Probably it's because your project, your P&ED phase is taking longer than anticipated. Why is it taking longer? Well, we had additional cultural studies that needed to be concluded. We had additional meetings, and the community asked for something else, and we were in agreement with it. And so we're revising our project report. It's going to take additional time. We had something hold up our environmental phase. All these need to be part of the justification for a change in a PCR. It's important to look at the entire project, make sure your scope aligns with your schedule, aligns with your costs. Headquarters approves PCRs internally. If it's a high profile project or you're asking for a greater than $5 million increase, or there's something really crazy happening on your project, on your PCR, it's going to go to an exec level review. Once these have been reviewed by our committees and any comments have been addressed, then our office is going to turn these PCRs into project amendments for CTC approval. Allocations. You need to know the preparation schedule for these projects. How long do we have until between the time our items are due and the CTC meeting? It's about 7 weeks, give or take. So if you know that you're going to need an allocation in the June meeting, 7 weeks was last week. So we need a lot of lead time. Why do we need a lot of lead time? We have a lot of projects. We need to generate all of our book items. We need to get sign off on all these book items from CTC staff before we go to the agenda. We have certain laws about posting items on the internet before a CTC meeting. So there's a long timeline. We review each other's items. There's just a lot of work that needs to be done. June is the last meeting of the fiscal year. So if you have anything that needs to be done before 25-26, you have to get it done in June. P&ED is automatically requested when you program a project, unless you ask us different, or when we're adopting a new SHOPP. When we're adopting a new SHOPP, we'll typically ask the districts, which projects do you want to allocate P&ED on, if we're able to allocate it early before the 26-27 fiscal year. PS&E and right-of-way support are requested by the project manager, or you guys are helping the project manager request them, or you're requesting on behalf of the project manager. So know your environmental document requirements. If CEQA is a CE, then you write CE when you have a CE date. If it's not CE, if it's a higher level environmental document, then we need a prior or concurrent future consideration of funding. Those are processed by environmental. Hopefully, if you guys have not done that before, you know who to talk to get those processed. When you're requesting PS&E, Do you need an SB1 baseline agreement? Typically, baseline agreements are required within 6 months of achieving P&ED. So right around the time that we're asking for PS&E allocations. And if your amount that you're requesting differs from the amount programming, we need an explanation of why. If you're right within 1%, we're probably fine. If you are asking for 12% more than you programmed, please give us some reasons of why this is happening. CTC preparation schedule, we already talked about. You must have, oh, this is for construction allocations. So yeah, again, 7 weeks ahead of time for any allocation to our office. You need to be RTL at the time of funds request submittal.
I know it's in like the manuals, but is there like a flow chart, like for example, the SB1 funding where you said like after 6 months you have to like send them the sorry, I forget what you said.
Baseline agreement?
Baseline agreement. Is there like a flow chart or something that's like available that shows like when this happens, you need to do this?
It's in the SHOPP guidelines. I don't know that we exactly have a flow chart that's going to walk you through everything. Our SB1 coordinator or our baseline coordinator is also going to reach out to your district.
Okay, thank you.
You need to be RTL when you're submitting a construction allocation request. If there's differences in the programming, so if your CTIPS record is different than what you're asking for in your funds request in post miles, in performance, in the amount that you're asking for, in the description of your work, let us know why. If these changes are big, then we're going to need a documentation PCR processed. Hopefully that's happened before. If your CTIPS record shows 60 culverts and you're coming in for a construction allocation and you're only going to deliver us 48 culverts, you should have done a PCR to describe why this is happening. Why are we changing so much from what we originally showed the commission last time? Our SHOPP funds are, yeah, go ahead.
So one really quick thing in regards to that. So because you mentioned documentation PCR, so I'm just wondering, if you are submitting a funds request that has changes in programming or in scope from whatever was, already described, does the PCR, the documentation PCR has to come necessarily before, or can it be submitted along with the funds request, or it can be submitted after, or like, is there a particular guidance in regards to that?
So ideally, let me go back a little bit. Why do I say documentation PCR? SHOPP guidelines do not allow us to present amendments in the year of delivery of a project. So if I have a project that's a 24-25 program for construction, I can't process a PCR once I enter that fiscal year. And so a documentation PCR means a PCR which is not going to become an amendment. It's been submitted too late. Ideally, these come before your funds request deadline. PCRs have their own timeline. Hopefully, the project management team talked to you about the timeline for processing PCRs. PCR meetings are once every month, but typically if we have a PCR meeting in the month of March, it's not going to make it to the March CTC meeting because it needs to go through its own committees. It needs to get approved. It needs to be marked up. We don't have enough time. We've got our own submittal due dates 7 weeks before the meeting. And so typically we'll say maybe a March PCR meeting would be an amendment in maybe June. I mean, it just takes time for things to process and the back and forth for edits and stuff like that if we have comments. So every once in a while we'll get a funds request maybe in June and they've got a big change in the performance and we'll say, hey, you didn't have a PCR to update your performance on this. And so typically our due date for our June meeting is going to be at the beginning of May. And so we're going to say, cram something into the May PCR meeting. So get something in there so we have a document that shows why we're changing our performance so much. Like I said, hopefully your PCR was submitted in January or something like that when you knew that you had a performance change before it gets to us. And then we're not complaining. My staff's not complaining. Everybody's happy. SHOPP funds request, last bullets on here, include construction support and capital on a funds request. Include the justifications for any changes that have happened, and your amount that you're requesting for construction capital must match your certified estimate. I think OE is going to ask for a certified estimate. We want to see it too. We want to make sure that you have estimated, rechecked your estimates 90 days before you have submitted your project to us. So these are fresh numbers. These are good numbers. A little bit about the minor program. Minor projects have the same SHOPP eligibility rules as major SHOPP projects. Like I mentioned before, you can't buy pieces of guardrail to stick in a maintenance yard. You can't buy a new truck or a piece of equipment that's going to be towed around. These need to be capital improvements, same as major SHOPP projects. When we're building a minor project, they must demonstrate independent utility. This is something that we would build on its own. Sometimes we do a FCO or a financial contribution to others with minor funds. So we can do some what would normally be minor improvements as part of somebody else's infrastructure improvement project that they're doing. So maybe City of Fresno is building a multi-use path, and we are going to put some upgraded pedestrian crossing markings at an intersection in this area. Is this intersection improvement something that we would do on its own as a project? Probably, yeah. So that would be an example of independent utility for a project. If we are providing the rails on a bridge that's being replaced, is that something that would be independent utility? Maybe if we'd be replacing the rails by themselves, but if the whole bridge needed to be replaced, maybe not. So independent utility is defined in our minor guidelines and is something that we just kind of have a lot of friction with the districts at times. So be aware of what independent utility is. Minor guidelines are on our SHOPP webpage. They were just updated last year, and they're short. They're easy to read. Or you could ask our minor coordinator, Grace, in our office if you have any questions about minor projects. You've probably seen this before. This is the meeting prep schedule. On the left side are each of the 7 CTC meetings that happened during the year. And this column right here is the due dates to submit to our office for programming actions. How many weeks? 7. Good. Baseline agreements. So for baseline agreements, submit a complete and accurate package. Cross-check all documentation for consistency. So your CTIPS record, your project report, the schedule and PRISM, all these need to be in alignment. We've got a checklist on our website that tells you what you need. And so everything's laid out pretty well for baseline submittals. Timely use of funds. I think Jaime had probably gone through this pretty completely on his side, right? So the only timely use of funds action that our office handles are allocation time extensions when you can't come in the fiscal year in which something's programmed, and you need to get an extension for these projects. Our SHOPP guidelines have certain language in there for what criteria you need to meet for an allocation time extension. And I think it says something like extraordinary and outside of the department's control. So what does that mean? It means that you can't say Oh, we put our B team on this project. We got busy with something else. What's the other excuses we can't use? We use consultants, and they just weren't very good. These aren't items that commission views as outside of the department's control. So, what's a good excuse for a allocation time extension? An emergency project happened in the vicinity of this, and our surveyors couldn't get out. So we had no access to the project. Things outside of our control, events, things that don't go over well. Our surveyors were tied up. That's kind of a poor excuse. A good excuse would be our federal liaisons have left recently, and we had prior approval and the new person is not working with us. Or we submitted our railroad agreement request a year ago and they've been too tied up to get back to us. That's something out of our control. So when you're submitting allocation time extensions to us, you might get a little bit of pushback depending on how good of a case you're making for these extensions. And Jaime might have also gone over this kind of thing with the extensions for completion of phases in his office. You need to come forward with a compelling reason for why we're asking for this, is what I'm saying. So our team has gone through a lot of these. We'll work with you to try and put something together that makes sense. Quiz time. What document becomes an amendment to change a project's cost, scope, schedule, or performance? PCR, great. You guys are smart. Can SHOPP projects be used to repair a maintenance building? Yes. How far ahead of a CTC meeting do I need to submit documents to SHOPP? You guys are good. I told you do well, right? Take-home messages. Understand the SHOPP guidelines. The SHOPP guidelines are on our website. They're on CTC's website. They define what we do and what we can't do. And so if you have a question about what a SHOPP project can do, what our rules are that we enforce, take a look at the SHOPP guidelines. If you see us violating the SHOPP guidelines, let us know. Oh, whoops. Importance of complete submittals to headquarters. Make sure that you've got all your justifications in place. Make sure that if you have a change to your project scope, schedule, cost, or whatever, when you're coming in for an action, make sure all that's documented well. Make sure it's all backed up. Know your tools. We've got a lot of tools on our website. Take a look at the SHOPP website. We've got a lot of guidance on there. We've got guidelines. We have forms. Know that a lot of information is available to you to help you do your jobs well. Communication is key. Reach out to the staff. I've got all my seniors sitting in the back there. They are happy to help you guys. So give them a call, give them an email. They'll help you out. This is the SHOPP office. Atifa does our statewide SHOPP development. She also does a lot of the PCR coordination. Goggin has districts 1, 2, and 3. Joe has districts 4, 8, and 9. Avalardo has 5, 6, and 10. Daniel has 7, 11, and 12. Grace is our minor coordinator and is happy to help you with any minor questions. Gustavo does a lot of our reporting, database work, a lot of our background stuff that not a lot of people see, but is useful in keeping our office running. Nina does our database management. She does a lot of CTIPS work. She keeps the seniors doing what they're supposed to be doing. She handles a lot of communication in our office, make sure that all of your submittals are going to the right people. And Jessica does our SB1 baseline agreements. So give Jessica a call if you have questions about baseline agreement requirements. or if you're having trouble getting one through, or you have questions on the whole process, she can help you out and point you in the right direction. This is our internal website. Super useful, constantly updated, has all of the guidelines that we develop internally and all the CTC guidelines and resolutions that we refer to. Resolution G11 for all of our emergency stuff, G13 for different types of tricky things that we can do in our office, and safety delegations. Our SHOPP guidelines are on there, minor guidelines. I don't know if any of you deal with variance. All of our updated variance balances are on there. Forms, info, links to other resources that we find useful. Anyway, take a look. The external page has some simplified reporting on it. Not quite as useful. The internal page is where it's at. That's all I had. Are there any questions? Sure, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm just stuck on the baseline. Yeah, you said something I didn't get a chance to type it in. 6 months before baseline.
6 months after project report or PNED is complete.
6 months after project PAED is complete.
Yeah.
It's due. Okay,
Yeah,
thank
and
you.
it should be in the SHOPP guidelines for when a baseline agreement is due. We typically do it, I don't know, 3 meetings after you're requesting PS&E, 2 or 3 meetings. It can be done earlier as well. You had a question in the orange too. All right, go ahead.
For you mentioned the variance. What can you explain what the variance like money is, and also what it's used for, and who can like utilize that like pool of money?
Variance is money to manage programmed projects. Whenever we adopt a new SHOPP and we add those last 2 years to the SHOPP, we are going to give your district 5% of the amount of total programmed projects in a variance balance. So if you program $100 million, you're going to get $5 million of variance per fiscal year that we're adding. I mean, for each fiscal year that we're adding to the SHOPP. So for 26, 27 had 100 million, and 27, 28 had 100 million. This is the RTL years only, the delivery years of the projects. Each of those years will get 5% of the total of the projects they're meant to deliver in those years. This is a amount of money that is meant to cover any increases in costs for those fiscal years specifically. You can't move money between fiscal years of variance. It's meant to cover cost increases for inflation. If you are increasing the cost of your project, it's going to use the variance. If you are able to reduce the cost of your project, it's going to increase the amount of variance in that year. We have a FAQ on our website that tells you how variance is used. It can get complicated when you're moving projects between fiscal years. There's a lot of variance impacts, and it's kind of a mess. We're probably going to change the rules just a little bit in the next fiscal year, but variance is meant to manage projects in a fiscal year for a district.
Is that just for capital costs or support, or does it matter?
All unallocated phases.
Unallocated phases. Okay.
So anything that you can do an amendment for, meaning a phase is programmed in a future year, if you're doing an amendment to change the cost up and down, it affects the variance in the year of construction for the project.
Does that need to be approved like through your office or CTC or anyone, or it's just at the district's discretion how they want to use it?
Variance is a Caltrans only.
I want to do a quick follow-up because I think, just to clarify, the variance is something that district manages, correct? But the approval process for making any updates still go through the PCR process. So if you're going to make changes to anything like increasing the cost or anything, you have to do the PCR, which is approved by the CTC. But it's like they're looking at different things. The CTC is approving the topic of the PCR, but within the district, you have to ensure that you have the money. It's like a reserve that the district has to cover any cost increases. Because I think one of the issues, and I think one of the problems too that a lot of districts face, because you mentioned it's usually for cost increases, but unfortunately, a lot of the things that I've seen, particularly in District 7, is that the variance tends to be used more for including additional scope. And it is good if it's important if you really need to add the scope. It is, it's one of the things that I've heard from management is like, it's better to do the right thing. But the problem becomes is like, at what point is it okay to add additional scope? Like, you don't want to keep adding a tremendous amount of scope at the last moment of the design. If you can identify it when you're programming the project, that's the best time, because then you can account for it when you're programming the project. A really quick follow-up, because I've heard from management that they're planning to revamp the whole idea of how variance is managed. Is that something that you could provide an update out just to get an idea? Because you mentioned right now it's 5%, but I know that a lot of districts have mentioned that they've struggled to keep up with any changes that need to be handled with the variance. And like again, from management, I've heard that there's been talks in updating how variance is handled. Is there any updates or?
There's a steering committee that's going to take a look at the concept of allowing fiscal year moves, and they're going to decide whether or not they're going to approve that or not. If it's approved, then we will have to go through and update all of our variance rules and make announcements to the rest of the state to say, this is the change that we're making. I have not heard any discussion of giving larger than 5% allocations to anybody. When we set aside money for variance, it means fewer projects that we can program. So we're constrained, and we still want to put the maximum number of improvements out on the state highway system that we possibly can. If we were to increase our variance allocations to 10 or 15%, it would mean fewer bridges, fewer pavement projects, fewer safety improvements. Everything would be drawn down to compensate for that. All right. Any other questions? Go ahead.
One last question from my side. And perhaps I'm not sure if you would know the answer, but if you don't, perhaps for the people organizing the academy, I'm just wondering, looking at the agenda, I don't think we cover the topic of oversight projects and how that is handled, because we covered non-SHOPP projects yesterday, then we're covering SHOPP projects. I've always wondered where the money from oversight projects comes, because we always say the way that they use it in district, they're like, oh, it's like an plan check. Of course, it's not the case, but I'm just wondering, where's that money coming from? Like, is that set aside? Is there a set amount for? Because you can request for an oversight project, you can request money, and then if the budget is not enough, you can always go back to ask for additional funds. And there's not that oversight kind of like there is for like SHOPP allocations or for reimbursed projects, which are probably even more scrutinized because you have a set amount, and there's no like guidelines for G12 supplementals or stuff like that for reimbursed. So yeah, just yeah. But that would be a general suggestion to perhaps include, if we could have like a discussion on future academies to like cover the topic of oversight projects, because I think it's something very interesting, and I do wonder why there's not as much discussion about it. Perhaps there's a reason, but
All right. Thank you, Rich.